Okay, some waves, for example water waves, require particles. They require water particles, hence they're called water waves. Okay, water particles. Okay, energy is essentially transferred from one particle to another. Sound waves also require particles. Okay, sound can travel through air, and that's how we get our voice across the room to your ears. Okay, but sound will also travel through water. That's why when you're swimming underwater you can still hear sound from outside, and sound will also travel through solid like steel, e.g. steel, which is why you can hear the noise of a train when you're standing at a station before you've even seen the train. Okay, sound travels very quickly through a solid, but it does require particles. Waves that require particles are called mechanical. These are all mechanical waves because they use particles. There are other mechanical waves, seismic waves. Okay, energy is being transferred through planet Earth. When there's an earthquake, we can detect an earthquake from the other side of the planet because the seismic waves are transmitted via the particles of the rocks, etc. So if we need particles, they're mechanical waves. But how do we get energy from the sun? Okay, there are negligible particles in space. Space is a vacuum. Let's say there's no particles. Okay, so how on earth do I get energy transferred to Earth from the sun? Okay, over such a huge distance as well. Okay, we know that waves transfer energy, so somehow energy is getting there. Okay, and we need to understand how that is happening without particles. So there's another type of wave. We know waves are oscillations. Okay, oscillations don't have to be of particles. Oscillations of electric and magnetic fields occur, and they give us a thing that we call I've forgotten how to write. Let's try that again. Electromagnetic waves, and that's where the name comes from. They are vibrations of electrical and magnetic fields. Okay, importantly, we are not needing particles to transfer energy from the sun to Earth. Okay, electromagnetic waves is a really quite a big topic. There are a lot of waves to think about. There's a whole spectrum of waves. Okay, a range of wavelengths and frequencies. So if I quickly try and draw this here, okay, not particularly brilliant, but I've got large wavelength at this end, I've got a large wavelength at one end and a very small wavelength at the other, and a variety of wavelengths in between. So I could put a big long arrow there saying decreasing wavelength. Okay, and this spectrum is a huge range, it's massive. The large wavelengths, hundreds and thousands of meters across, all the way to the other side where the wavelength is itty bitty tiny, okay, really small. If the wavelength is decreasing, okay, what do you think is happening to the frequency? Okay, well over here, okay, the wave crests are far apart. Okay, over here they're really, really close together. If the wavelength in my diagram decreases from left to right, my frequency is increasing. Okay, so I've got decreasing wavelength and I've got increasing frequency, and I need to divide my spectrum up into 7 divisions. There are 7 divisions or 7 groupings. Okay, that you need to be aware of. And we can start off with our larger wavelength, low frequency at one end, and I'm going to call those radio waves. And at the other end, where I've got very, very small wavelength and a very high frequency, I've got gamma waves or rays. I'm going to call them, let's stick to waves. Right in the middle, we've got the visible light spectrum, which we know is made up of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo and violet. ROYGBIV, Richard of York gave battle in vain. Remember that however the hell you like. Okay, that's 3 of them, and I've got 7. Okay, remember there are 7 categories, groups. So next to the radio waves, okay, I've got microwaves. These are both used in communications. Microwaves, I've got a gap between microwaves and visible light. Okay, if we look at visible light, I've got red here on the largest wavelength. Okay, if it's too red to be seen, we call it infrared. And if it's too violet to be seen with the naked eye, we call it ultraviolet. Between ultraviolet and gamma, we've got one gap left, and that is X-rays. Okay, now some of you may be aware that we're quite cautious when it comes to things like X-rays, because we experience those when we go to the dentist. Most of us have had an X-ray. Okay, the dentist leaves the room to take the X-ray. They won't take too many X-rays, and they need to keep a record of how many X-rays you've had, so you don't have too many. Ultraviolet, X-ray and gamma waves are all ionizing types of radiation. They all have enough energy to ionize an atom, and that means knock off an electron or two. Okay, so they have enough energy to remove electrons from atoms. And if you remember, atoms have got a neutral charge, but if you take an electron off, it then has a positive charge because we've removed one of those negative charges, and we don't have an atom anymore, we have an ion. Okay, so ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma waves, they are ionizing radiations. The small wavelength high frequency end of the spectrum has increasing energy. So increasing frequency and energy, we could say. Funnily enough, radio waves at the other end have not got very much energy. They are considered to be very safe, which is why listening to the radio is not harmful. It's certainly not considered to be harmful, and that's why we use it for communication. Okay, microwaves with a little bit more energy than radio waves, but the lower end of the spectrum of microwaves we use for mobile phones, and that's why there is a little bit of discussion still about how safe mobile phones are, but there's no solid evidence that it's particularly harmful. Okay, but as we increase our frequency and our energy, we get into more harmful radiations. Okay, infrared, we might use that for a remote control, not considered dangerous at all. And apart from the ability to blind yourself by staring at the sun, visible light isn't particularly harmful either. Okay, but when we start getting into the ultraviolet, X-ray, gamma waves, these have the ability to ionize atoms. We can use this on purpose to sterilize surgical equipment, for example, so we can actually damage cells, we can damage the DNA, okay, and that can lead to cell mutation, cancer. So we need to be quite careful of ultraviolet, X-ray and gamma waves. But what you really need to know is electromagnetic spectrum is made up of waves with a variety of wavelengths and frequencies, but they all have the same velocity Okay, we generally call that a letter C. We're talking about the speed of light. They all have the same velocity. A variety, a range of wavelengths and frequencies. You need to know that there are 7 groups. It's a good idea to know the order. We've got very, very large wavelength waves at one end. We've got very, very small wavelength waves at the other end with gamma. Beware, they might give you this kind of diagram the other way around, in which case it isn't ROYGBIV, it's VIB-GYOR. And it's not Richard of York gave battle in vain, it's vain in battle gave York of Richard. So beware. I tend to draw it with radio waves on the left, gamma waves on the right, but you do need to make sure which way around the question presents out to you. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Have I missed anything else? Let's quickly go through this. Radio waves, we know that's for communication, we're listening to the radio. Microwaves, mobile phones, we can heat our food, we can excite the water particles in our food, so we can heat food with microwaves. But mobile phones, we're all using those, aren't we? Infrared, we use it for our remote control, but it's also used by your oven. That's basically heat. When you feel heat, that's going to be, you can pick that up using a special camera. That is infrared radiation, and police use that, don't they? They have infrared cameras to find criminals hiding in bushes and stuff, or and they can pinpoint them using the heat radiated by the body heat. Visible light, well, that's obviously useful, we use that constantly. Ultraviolet light, X-rays, gamma waves, they have ionizing ability. They can sterilize equipment. We can use ultraviolet for security, checking for forged notes. X-rays, imaging. Gamma waves, imaging. That can be for medical reasons, or surveying the drains, or surveying engineering equipment, surveying airplanes. They can look for cracks. We can use these things for penetrating into a structure, anywhere where the eye can't see. Basically, they give us kind of Superman vision if we use it properly. So pretty cool, but harmful as well. So, ironically, gamma waves can cause damage to DNA and cause cancer, but we can also use them to treat cancer. Okay, if we aim it at the cancer cells, we can actually treat cancers. Alright, so pretty good stuff. You do need to know about all of this. It's worth knowing all of the different types of radiation. Know the order of your colours and visible light as well. Okay, I just remember ROYGBIV, but you can make your own mnemonic. Okay, good luck.